whether or not the Russians had been successful in getting U.S. persons involved in the campaign or not to work on their behalf, again, either in a witting or unwitting fashion. And so, therefore, I felt as though the FBI investigation was certainly well-founded and needed to
If what you're looking for is the CIA director's assessment of whether there was sufficient cause, whether there was a well-grounded basis to start the FBI's counterintelligence investigation into the sitting president and his campaign and the question of whether they colluded with Russia, a counterintelligence investigation which continues to this day and is unprecedented in American history. If that's what you're looking for, it definitely helps a lot with that. Because he apparently is the one, CIA Director John Brennan is the one who's basically saying that the information that the CIA was able to observe, what he was able to see as CIA Director last year, was worrying enough that it was handed to the Bureau, and that's what started that investigation. I think that's very helpful to understanding what happened. Former CIA Director Brennan also helped everyone understand today, maybe for the first time in open session, how this kind of thing might have worked. If this was a Russian op, if our election was in part a foreign intelligence operation, how might the Russians conceivably have pulled this off? If there was any American cooperation or collusion with what they did, how did the Russians do that? I mean, if they did succeed in getting American collusion, if they succeeded in getting the Trump campaign to collude with them, how might that have worked? Even if the Trump folks didn't start off intending to side with another country against our own, how could the Russians have done it? Watch this.
I have studied Russian intelligence activities over the years and have seen it, again, manifest in many different of our counterintelligence cases and how they have been able to get people, including inside of CIA, to become treasonous. And frequently, individuals who go along that treasonous path do not even realize they're along that path until it gets to be a bit too late. And that's why, again, my radar goes up early when I see certain things that I know what the Russians are trying to do, and I don't know whether or not the targets of their efforts are as mindful of the Russian intentions as they need to be. It is traditional intelligence collection tradecraft in terms of HUMINT, which is to identify individuals that you think are either very influential or rising stars, and you will try to develop a relationship with them. And the Russians frequently will do that through cutouts or through false flag operations. They won't identify themselves as Russians or as members of the Russian government. They will try to develop that personal relationship, and then over time they will try to get individuals to do things on their behalf. And that's why, again, having been involved in a lot of counterintelligence cases over the years and seeing this pattern over and over again, my radar
Russian espionage efforts. This is foreign to us as politics. This is not foreign to John Brennan as a long-time, lifelong observer of Russian espionage, efforts. So ask the people who understand how the Russians work, right? Ask the people who understand how Russian foreign intelligence operations, ask the people who know how Russian active measures against foreign enemies, how those things work. And to them, it sort of makes sense when they look at it through Russian eyes. I So hearing about how the Russians approach an op like this, how they approach Americans, how they try to persuade unwitting Americans to ultimately betray our country, that is helpful for figuring out what the Russians might have been hoping for and trying for here, even though we don't know if the Trump associates they contacted went along with it. And there's one last thing that came up today. This is the last thing. And this is an uglier prospect that was also raised today in this questioning with a former CIA director. And I want you to watch how CIA Director John Brennan reacts here. So they've been talking at this hearing over the course of this remarkable testimony from Brennan, and it ultimately gets to the point where they're talking almost protectively.
Director, there is what is referred to as consciousness of guilt evidence. That's when somebody lies about a material fact, and that fact, the fact of them lying, can be used against that person because it